What up, everybody, and welcome to Baz on Blades. My name is Baz, and I talk about blades. Today's feature blade is another product from Ganzo Firebird, and it is the FH31 folder. This particular version in their carbon fiber over G10 laminate. It is also available, I believe, in black G10, OD green G10 at least. There may be one other color at G10. It's probably one of their standard colors, but I know for sure black and OD green, and then the carbon fiber G10 laminate. They all have the blue pivot and then silver hardware for the remainder of the hardware. Still sticking with that blue, guys, and it's not totally obnoxious. This looks like a pretty thin coating over a radially machined texture on that hardware, so it's not that sort of super cheap, ultra shiny, almost like a painted look. But what you've got here is the FH31. This is a fairly new model from Ganzo, late 2018, and now it is January of 2019, and I'm finally getting around to reviewing it. And you know what? It's pretty decent. I'm not going to say that it's going to be the equal of the newer FH21 and FH11 models in the machine G10. This one's got more of the feeling of the older type of Ganzo folder, although this one is on a bearing pivot. It is a flipper, and it's set up great for flipping. No problems there, and we'll get into that in the review. Let's go ahead and take a look at some packaging very quickly, and it is the standard Ganzo Firebird box here. There is your model designator if you are interested in this model, and I did pick this up at Power Cutlery. That's powercutlery.com. It's the only place that I buy Ganzo anymore. They are in America on the West Coast in California. They do flat rate shipping for $2.99. So, you know, I got this knife in right around the $25 mark shipped. And, you know, if you order 2 or 3 knives from them, it's just $2.99 to ship. And that's a pretty good deal, guys. Power Cutlery has been really good for me, and I'm not sponsored by them or getting any kickbacks or anything. But if you decide that you want to get this Ganzo or any other of their fantastic knives, go on over to Power Cutlery, and when you do, go down to your comment on your order and say Baz on Blades sent me, so we can get the Baz on Blades name out there. So I got this from Power Cutlery and got it in 3 days, and I've been carrying it and using it a little bit, guys, and it's got some really great features and a couple of things that I think need to be refined a little bit. Now, as far as the size, it is a 3 3/8 inch blade, and that's 8.5 centimeters, so you're right in that sort of EDC sweet spot. The blade stock thickness 118 thousandths of an inch or 3 millimeters. Your blade width 1.1 inches or 28 millimeters. Handle length 4.5 inches or 11.5 centimeters. Your handle thickness just shy of a half an inch at 0.48, and that is 12.2 millimeters. Your handle width at the widest point 1.2 inches or 31 millimeters. Closed width, not too awful bad on this knife. The widest point is out in the center here, and it's about 1.5 inches or 37 millimeters. Overall length 7 7/8 of an inch or 20 centimeters. Your stop pin diameter, a healthy 134 thousandths of an inch or 3.4 millimeters. Behind the edge thickness, a fairly slicey 23 thousandths of an inch is averaged from 3 spots, and that's 0.59 millimeters. Handle to blade ratio, very good at 0.75, and your weight is decent at 4.06 ounces or 115 grams. And I would like to see that weight come down a little for this model, and the reason that it's so heavy is you can look down in here. There is no milled out sections on the liners. They are full liners. They have not been weight relieved. That would be a great addition to this model. Now, as far as our materials go, We are in D2 for the blade steel, and of course D2 is a World War II era tool steel. It's a pretty basic tool steel. High carbon content at 1.5 to 1.6%. It's a high chromium content for a tool steel, making it semi-stainless, and the chromium content is 11.5 to 12%. 13.5% is what you need to hit to be stainless. So just a 1.5 shy of that pretty much. And this is a vanadium alloy tool steel with 0.9 to 1.1% of vanadium. That's a fair amount of vanadium. And as we all know, vanadium works in conjunction with the carbon to form ultra-hard carbides in the matrix of the steel. And what that means is within the matrix of the steel there are microscopic ultra-hard particles, and that is one of the things that gives D2 its high performance as far as edge retention. D2 will take a extremely sharp toothy edge that will last a decent amount, and then it will go to a working edge, and D2 will hold a working edge for a long time. Now, the trade-off for that wear resistance, it's hard to resharpen, so it's a type of steel that you want to maintain. Don't let it get super dull where you've got to really move any metal around to sharpen it. That will take some time. Now, as far as toughness and impact resistance, D2 can be a little chippy if it is profiled too thin on the edge. And it is not a good tool steel for high impact and chopping. For a small folder like this, it's a fine steel. For a regular use medium fixed blade or something, it's a fine steel with great edge retention, but it's not real good with impact resistance. So as far as toughness and impact, we're going to go decent there. As far as corrosion resistance, again, it's semi-stainless. It just barely misses out on the stainless designator, so it's pretty decent. D2 will stain if it's not maintained if you live in a high humidity area, especially if you live near the coast where you have a high amount of salt in the air. You can have some corrosion issues if you don't take care of it, but it's so easy to take care of. Wipe it off after use. Apply a thin film of mineral oil, food grade mineral oil, and then wipe that right back off so it doesn't feel oily, and that's pretty much all you have to do to protect it. Very easy to protect D2. It is not the nightmare steel that some people make it out to be. Now, in your handle materials, it's made pretty much like every other Ganzo folder with this type of scale material. That is a single layer of carbon fiber over black G10. You know what? A lot of people say it's super thick. It does have this matte satiny sort of finish on it, so it's not quite glossy, but there is not any texture there. So your grip on that is going to be in the profile of the handle rather than the surface texture of the handle scales. But it's basically a G10 with a single layer of carbon fiber. It's attractive in the way of a basic, inexpensive carbon fiber. The blue steel pivot, again, I think it looks a little nicer than the older style dome pivot that was blued. As this one, I think it's a different technique. It seems like a much thinner coating that shows the machining on that pivot. It makes it look a little more like anodized titanium. Not exactly like it, guys, but closer than the old glossy dome pivot. The rest of your hardware, all in Torx, of course. T8 on the pivot, T6 for your small screws, are in stainless. And I did get on these screws when this came in. I didn't disassemble it, but I did go through all the screws. They actually feel decent, guys. They're fairly deeply socketed, and the fit is moderately tight. There is some play, but they are deeply socketed. If they're halfway heat treated, I think they'll be okay if you are careful with them. But again, you're talking about hardware on a $25 knife, guys. It's not going to be super high-end hardware. Let's see here. New for Ganzo on their ambi pocket clip model knives, at least with this one, is a tab filler for the left hand side, much like a Rick Hinderer does with the Hinderer knives. That's, it might be more attractive to somebody, it may not. Some people don't like the hole. I don't think that the chrome tab is any better looking than the hole would be, because the hole would just be black cut down into that black G10. Maybe with all black hardware on it and a black filler tab against this carbon fiber, now that would be a fantastic look. G10 machine backspacer, I very much love what Ganzo Firebird is doing in their backspacers on their last few models in the machine G10 with added lanyard holes and texture, and that's actually, that jimping right there, it's good. That's good jimping right there. Very much a surprise. It's very well done. Fold over deep carry pocket clip, I think the same one that's being used, that was used on the FH11 and the FH21. Liner lock, as I said, it's not weight relieving. It is stainless liners. They are inletted into the scales, so they're not showing out on the edge. They're inletted into pockets. Fit and finish is pretty good. Materials are pretty good, guys. I mean, we're taking a look at this thing. You're looking at the grinds here. Fit and finish wise on that blade, it's pretty doggone well done. Now, this sort of modern, contemporary, modified, tactical, Wharncliffe type of blade profile is not really my thing. But if you like that kind of thing, it's going to be very attractive to you. You've got a great looking swedge up here to thin that down, where you could actually do some piercing with this knife. Now, and it's sharpened well. It does have a tip. It is not rounded over at all. It catches and pierces instantly. The secondary edge is pretty even. There is some flare towards the heel, and I think that is still some thickness in the blade, where this finger choil, it's a large choil, but I think it needs to come back. It needs to come out at least another 1/8 of an inch, 3 millimeters maybe, to get fully past this wide and soft plunge grind here. So you may get some flaring at the termination of the edge. But the edge is well done. It is sharp out of the box. Oh yeah, it's sharp, guys. There's no doubt about that. No burr on it. The grinds are well done and even side to side. The swedge grind is. Even the finish on the back of the blade is very well done. Fit and finish on the handle, guys. It's Ganzo. Ganzo really, their fit and finish is probably the most consistent thing about their knives, especially in their handles. I've never gotten, as far as I can remember, I've never gotten or even looked at a Ganzo that the fit and finish on the handle wasn't at least totally acceptable for their price point, and really much better than their price point indicates. There's no gaps, there's no machining marks, there's really nothing here, guys, to where you're going to say, oh, I wish this was a little better as far as fit and finish goes. Now, the only thing really that needs improvement in the handle, I'm going to say, is the lock bar contact surface here. It has been touched off on with a very small chamfer on it, but it is still pretty crisp on the edge. And if you like to sit around and play with your knives, what you're going to end up with on this knife opening and closing is a place on your thumb right here. Let's see if I can get my thumb. You can see I've got my liner lock, frame lock callus here on my thumb, but it's not super comfortable. I wish that was touched off on and had a facet on it rather than just the edge chamfered, much like the FH21 does. See this wide facet on that? That is super comfortable, guys. This, not super comfortable. So as far as fit and finish on the knife, no issues. I'm going to say that I want to see Ganzo come back and facet this liner here where you lock and unlock this liner lock. Other than that, guys, zero issues fit and finish wise, zero issues on the material. Let's go on to action, because the only other issue I have with this knife has to do with the action. Now, this is a modern FH model from Ganzo, and that's their bearing pivot models, and this does have a single row steel bearing pivot on it. And it is smooth, guys. I mean, there's no doubt about that. It's smooth. This one is not the most drop shutty of the last bearing pivot Ganzos that I've gotten, but it is also brand new. It has not been taken apart and cleaned or anything, guys. So that's not a big issue. The flipping action is fantastic. Fantastic. It is pretty much exactly like the flipping action on the FH21, which was a huge improvement over the FH11. So zero issues with the flipping action. It's a great detent, great flipper tab design, good relationship geometry between the flipper tab, the pivot center point, and the lockup point, and detent ball. So no issues there. The centering on it, let's check out the centering here. Well, the centering's right down the center, so it's centered. No issues there. Lockup. Okay, look at my hands, guys. I'm torquing on this pretty good. No play in any direction at all, guys. That's fantastic at this price point. The combination of bearing pivot action, a great detent and flipper action, great centering and solid lockup is great. But there is one thing about the action that I need to tell you about. It's something that I personally do not like. It is not a defect. It is just the result of certain types of designs. There is a detent ball in this, of course. That's what you get your closed position detent from for these knives. And in the geometry, the action of a knife, when you push the lock bar aside, whether it's a frame lock or liner lock, what you're doing, you move it out of the way, then the blade's got to come up over the detent ball, and so you can close it. Most knives that are one-handed knives, you want to be able to do it one-handed, so by the time you close this down, basically right here, you're past the detent ball, and then you can roll it on around without the detent ball being in the way. Because of the design on this knife, the contact with the detent ball is late in the rotation. So by the time you break that down to where your flipper tab hits your thumb, which is typically the place you'd go to shake it down, you're still not past the detent ball. And I don't like that myself, guys. I mean, it's not good or bad. It's just part of the design. But right here, I want to be past that detent ball so then I can just shake it down. But you can see right here, I'm not past the detent ball yet. I've got to break over the detent ball right there. So some people will not like that, depending on, you know, how you open and close your knife. Again, the action is fantastic outside of that, guys, and that's sort of a nitpicky type of thing, because there has been many very well received knives that had sort of a late detent ramp over as far as the time and closing the knife. And you know, it may or may not even matter to you. I've just got to tell you about it. So action is great, just like everything else. Ergonomics and utilitarian use of the FH31. Again, I'm not a huge fan of this type of blade profile. I want a little more belly to my knife, to my edge profile at least on the blade. And you know, this is basically, it's a straight profile. It is very slicey. It's 23 thousandths behind the edge thickness. That puts that edge thickness pretty much the same as a Spyderco Paramilitary 2. This is a pretty high flat grind. It's not full flat, but it's 4/5 the width of the blade, and it's not super thick blade stock at 3 mm. So with that wide of a flat grind, they're able to take the edge down fairly thin and slicey. Again, the sharpened edge from the factory was very good. The point is very good. You do have this large tip swedge on this sort of reverse tanto type of design of this modified Wharncliffe, and it is fairly thin right there. I'm gonna say that's 20 thousandths ish, coming up to 35 or so, 40 thousandths maybe. You know, without having the calipers, I'm having to eyeball that through the camera, guys. But it's not super thick. It's fairly thin as far as swedges go. So the piercing is going to be much better than just a blunt sort of reverse tanto would be. It's attractive as far as these knife blade profiles go. And you know what? If you are the type of person that likes a flat edge profile as far as what you're using it for, then you will love this knife. As far as the utilitarian use of the blade shape. If you are like me and like a little more belly, you may say, okay, I still like the design of it and it'll cut well enough for me, so I'm going to go with it. Or you may say, that's not really my thing, and pass on it. But that is more personal preference than it is any positive or negative aspect of this blade design, because it's a, it's a proven blade design, guys. Decades and decades and decades of Wharncliffes have been used all around the world, so no issues there. Ergonomics on the handle, strong point of this handle. That's something that Ganzo has done very well on a few of their knives, including what is my favorite old school style Ganzo, much like this knife, and that's the F761. And you can see that although the handles are not the same shape, they do share the same sort of design language and the same sort of, whoever designed the handle, whether it was an individual person or a party of people, they understand the ergos of the human hand. In a handle, you need, in my opinion, the opinion of Baz on Blades, you need an ergonomic shape. The more that handle feels, when you grab a knife and you go, okay, that's natural and that feels like it's melting into my hand, the better the shape is. You do have a choil here to keep you from sliding up on the blade. You've got the slight recess here. It's a good place for your thumb to go. It takes you right to the inletted jimping here on the handle, and that's just like his Benchmade does that on multiple models. My old school Striker is done that way. Griptilians are done that way. Spyderco has done this. It's a good way to do jimping that is both there and out of the way. And you can see it is flush. Pretty much flush. Maybe slightly proud of the scales, and you can feel it. Not the grippiest jimping, but it is there for use, guys, and you do flow right into that because of the handle shape. A drop in the butt to fit the curvature of your hand, wide open space here for multiple grips, your forward grip, your reverse grip. If you want to go with a draw grip, which I don't recommend with flipper type knives, since a flipper tab intrudes in the space between your thumb and first finger and it's not comfortable to use. So ergonomics are good there. Pocket clip use, if you've already tried the FH11, FH21, you know this pocket clip. It's pretty doggone decent. It's a skeletonized stamped steel deep carry clip, and you can see you might have maybe 3/16 of a quarter of an inch here that'll be exposed at the butt end of your knife. Not very much at all, especially considering it's black. Ergos and utility, no issue there, guys. So we've made it through all of these respects, sections of the review here, and we've only had a couple of things that I would like to see improved on. And you know, we got the thing with the detent ball, guys. I'm not real big on that late detent ball. You've got to go, you know, there's your closing position, but you're still not over the detent ball. And then, you know, you need to facet. We need to facet the lock bar mating surface there, just like the FH11 and FH21 had. Now, I want to close this out by saying I recommend this knife. If you like this type of blade profile, it's got a good ergonomic handle shape. It's a good size with a 3 3/8 inch blade, and you know, 7 7/8 inch overall. And you can see how it compares with the FH21. They are much the same, but this knife to me feels more like this knife than it does this knife, with the addition of a bearing pivot, which is like the FH21. The 761 did not have the bearing pivot. It had the hybrid washers with the Teflon or nylon washer on one side and bronze on the other. But this knife, as far as the way it's made, it feels more like that 761 than it does the knife that came out right before it, or right at the same time as it. I'm sorry, the FH21, because they were both released at the same time. So it's got a little more of that feel, but with the bearing pivot. And, you know, it's not bad, guys. $25. Bearing pivot flipper with great action, D2 tool steel for the blade steel. If it's your thing, if this is your thing in a design, you need to go ahead and get you one. I totally recommend it. Not really my thing, so what we're going to do with this knife here at Baz on Blades, it's going to go into the giveaway stockpile, because we are getting closer to 2,000 subs here. And I think that this is going to be a part of the giveaway when we hit that 2,000 sub mark. And you know, it's just a way for me to give back to you guys. So, as always, I appreciate you taking the time to watch one of my videos. God bless all of you, and we will talk to you again.